Welcome, everyone. We're delighted to have participants from all over the globe watching this live or later on because it is being recorded. And I want to thank everyone for joining the Spiritism Talk Series promoted by the U.S. Spiritist Federation. We meet every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And today I'm pleased to host this talk by Glaucio Pessoa. Now, before Glaucio starts the presentation, we'd like to know a little bit about his background. Glaucio is the co-founder and one of the directors of the Caritas Spiritist group. Formerly, he was a board member of the U.S. Spiritist Federation and vice president of the Christian Spiritist community of Atlanta, Georgia. Professionally, Glaucio is a senior technical program manager in the fields of AI and machine learning and cloud computing. And I will just say that I have been so looking forward to this presentation because I have a similar background to Daniel. And I can't wait to see him get into this and link this technology concepts to Spiritism. And
Hey,
so
Mark.
without without further ado, I will turn this over to Glaucio.
Thanks so much, Mark. Thanks for presenting me. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It's always great to be here and having this conversation about spiritism, and talk about a very interesting topic. So Kaizen and the synergies with spiritism. So just for starters, what's Kaizen? So Kaizen is a paradigm. It's the mindset for business and technology. And the interesting thing about Kaizen is that it is about constant progress and improvement. On the other hand, Spiritism, our doctrine, brings to light the necessity that we have as immortal souls to evolve incessantly. So even though Kaizen was introduced in the second quarter of the 20th century, Spiritism was talking about gradual progress 70 years before that. So there are synergies between the two mindsets. So both foster, first of all, open-mindedness, proactivity, root cause analysis, adaptability, and ingenuity. So why Kaizen? So again, Kaizen is a concept that talks about, again, progress through continuous improvement. And there's a very interesting story behind it. Actually, the term is compound of two Japanese words, and together they mean good change. And even though it was not called Kaizen back in the 1930s, but the idea behind it comes from the 1930s. And again, having this continuous improvement in small steps until you reach a goal again in technology. In the case here, historically speaking, uh, the Japanese adopted the principle right after World War II. The nation had been uh, hurt financially and politically, etc., due to the circumstances of World War II, and they had to rebuild the industry. So they were fascinated with some of the principles, and that's what they started to adopt. So we see the concept of them adopting Kaizen to streamline and to fast pace they rebuild the industry. And it so happened that by the early 70s, they had not only caught up with other nations, but they actually had leapfrogged other nations as far as productivity, and also as far as quality as well. And the U.S. has stopped. The U.S. started adopting, and initially also these practices were just for industry, and the U.S. started adopting, paying attention to the mindset. It took a while for the U.S. For the U.S. in other countries, but here in the U.S. They started paying attention to it in the late 80s and early 90s, and that's why they also started introducing it to manufacturing. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, that also mindset, the paradigm was started to be introduced in other areas of technology and business. And there are a lot of methodologies nowadays in software development and machine learning, for instance, that employ this mentality. Again, Kaizen is not a process, it's not a methodology, it is a mindset. And again, the idea is the whole idea that these fundamental positive modifications, they can be accomplished in small improvements. They require two things. They require cooperation and commitment from everyone involved. And from a very practical, very mundane standpoint, it really is important to lower the defect rate and to eliminate waste to boost productivity and also encourage the workers in their purpose as they're participating in the production environment and accountability, and also they promote innovation as well. And it's kind of interesting that even though again it is a concept that was introduced in manufacturing uh, about 80 years ago, but it can also be applied to a person. I have some funny stories during COVID of individuals that applied some of the ideas of Kaizen to their own personal lives. Of course, COVID was a very disruptive period for everyone, especially from a personal standpoint. And some individuals did apply that so that they could better manage their lives in a new under new circumstances. And again, an interesting thing about Kaizen again is that it is this open-mindedness, that there's always room for improvement, always room for doing something better. And you should identify the shortcomings and opportunities, but not only identify that, but also think about solutions for those and implement those solutions. And it's a cycle. It's not a one-time deal. It's a cycle that in which you continue revisiting the status quo and considering new and alternative ways to address any issues. And of course, whatever issues we encounter, we need to address those and fix those. And even those things that we're doing right, we always get up to thinking, if I'm doing this right, how can I do it better? And again, we see that since the 30s and 1940s. But Kardec mentioned this mindset in the mid 1800s. And several prominent spirits, they remind us that we need to review our little mundane actions and to identify the good behavior that has to be nurtured and the toxic attitudes that we need to improve on. We see this pursuit for perfection, and Jesus did bring that to us in Matthew chapter 5, verses 44 and 46 through 48, indicating that be therefore perfect, even as your Father, which is in heaven, is perfect. So we see this teaching here that Jesus is setting a goalpost for us, a goalpost of perfection. It's like our goal to reach that level. And not only that, he's not saying, hey, some group of people or some spirits or some individuals are going to reach perfection. He said it's an invitation to everyone. So everybody is being invited. Everybody has been directed to reach perfection. And we see this concept here in the Spirit's book. The Spirit's book does relay to us the concept of continuous progress. And we see here that our development is relentless, and it's a product of our own drive. Nobody's going to do our improvement for us. We have to take our own actions on that. And our actions are what shape our progress. So I also like what Kardec mentioned at some point, the state of nature. So the state of nature is when we were simple and ignorant as spirits, and eventually we broke away from that, and we again continue to challenge our present norms and always moving towards something better. We have this internal impulse, and again, in the Spirit's book, Kardec does explain the several moral laws, and we have the law of progress, which is this divine natural impulse that all of us have and drive us for our moral and intellectual improvement. And the good thing is that there's no turning back. There's no turning back to that stage, that state of nature, that is an initial starting point. Once we broke away from that, we're just moving forward. Now, that does not mean, again, that our movement is going to be instantaneous. It's going to take time. And how long is it going to take? Depends on each one of us. We own our progress. Nobody else is responsible for our spiritual development. It belongs to us in our own actions. But again, the good thing is that there's no turning back to the ignorant bliss, and Kardec uses that term, the ignorant bliss of the savage. And just to make a little parenthesis here, that whenever we talk about the progress of humankind, and people say, "Oh yeah, but are we really progressing? It seems that things are getting worse nowadays." And that's a total separate discussion. But yes, the world today is better than the world was before, and there are several factors that gives us the impression that the world is worse, but it is not. One of the factors that we have a lot more awareness of what happens throughout the world. 200 years ago, if a catastrophic event happened in the other side of the world, it would take us weeks of months to be aware of it. And nowadays, we are notified instantaneously. So again, it's not those events are not happening, it's just that they're happening now. We know what's going on, and along the same lines, not only we know what's going on, but also we feel sympathy. We feel empathy for our brothers and sisters who might be experiencing any kind of catastrophic event. Again, so there are some examples that we see, and that to show to us. And again, this is a totally separate discussion, but that shows to us that actually we're better off. Believe me, we're better off now than we were in the past. The interesting thing that in Jesus' message, and the spirits do highlight that for us, is that the path to perfection is based on simple rules. It's not, the rules are simple. It's just that we are not focused enough, most of the times to follow those rules or to do what's right. So we see here, for instance, Jesus giving us example, loving one's enemies, and even doing good, also, of course, to those who hate us, and praying for those who persecute us. So we see a description of doing what's right in a very more ample terms. And the good thing also about the teachings that we see in Jesus' teachings, and also that Spiritism highlights to us, is that everything is done in our daily experiences. So again, it's the simple things that we do day in, day out that count for our progress. And of course, Spiritism always highlights selfishness and pride that undermine this drive. Actually, I shouldn't say they undermine the drive. They actually hold us from holding us to extending a helping hand to others, to help both of us grow and others grow as well. And the biggest issue with selfishness and pride is just how much it overstimulates our ego. So we see those imperfections that they kind of wither our aspirations towards benevolence, abnegation, and devotion. But those are just examples. And again, the bottom line is, it's in our daily lives. I mean, the way we reach perfection is in our daily actions, as we deal with our family, as we interact with our neighbors, as our coworkers, and with our friends, and even with those who consider themselves our enemies. And it's in, and Jesus even uses that, as we see again in chapter 8 of the Spirit's book, book 3, in which Jesus explains to us that whole how we measure how much we've come along, and again, is by these acts of love, and even to the point of forgiving those that hurt us. So going back to Kaizen, right? So again, there's this different synergies, and I'm going to start explaining some of these synergies here. And there are some core points of the philosophy. Depending on who you ask, the different individuals are going to give you 12 core philosophies within Kaizen, 10 different ones. So what it is, actually, I summarize those into four core principles here, and that I believe are the most aligned with Spiritism. So the first one here, which it's very important, is let go of assumptions. So again, always think about challenging the existing paradigms. So we have to analyze the current state and look for opportunities for continuous learning and to find new ways to solve problems, and especially find new ways to solve old problems. Kardec does talk about the good person in the gospel. And Kardec indicates that a good person is somebody who complies with the laws of justice, love, and charity. However, Kardec also indicates that those individuals they review their actions to determine not only if they've proactively if they have not practiced any evil, but also if they have not overseen any use of opportunities to do what's right, and to help others. And again, not only overseeing the opportunities, but also letting go of the opportunities of doing good to others as well. So we see again this concept in line with Spiritism, and always analyzing: am I doing? How am I doing? How this self awareness of thinking: how am I doing? Am I doing the good things? Am I not doing wrong things? And a lot of times, as we mature as individuals, especially as we mature as spirits, both intellectually and morally, a lot of the actions that we took before, that we would not see as harmful before, now as we are advancing, we have a different perspective. So that's why we have to always go back and reanalyze those and look again for opportunities for doing things in a better way. Another principle here that I like about Kaizen is be proactive about solving problems. So we got to look for solutions and to find mistakes, and do not accept the status quo. I mean, so just because do not wait until a problem happens to address it. So going back to this whole concept of manufacturing, do not wait until 1,000. Let's say you're producing 1,000, 100 cars, 100 vehicles a day. Do not wait for every 10 of those cars to have a manufacturing defect. If you have a chance to identify that manufacturing defect beforehand, do it. Do not wait until those cars are manufactured, until they're shipped to the dealerships, and then they're sold to your consumers, and all of a sudden you have to do this huge recall, and 10% of your vehicles, they have the famous manufacturer recall. So do not wait for that. Try to see if there's any issue. Try to address them right away. So the same thing also with software development as well. Do not wait until your application has a glitch, and do not wait until 100,000 people download your application and now there's a glitch, and now you have to send a fix and address the issues for 100,000 users. So try to identify those issues right away before they become problems. So again, Kaizen has this idea of proactively looking for development, actively seeking out for opportunities to improve rather to react. So being proactive rather to be reactive. And we see something very interesting, very similar here in the Spirit's book, in Book 3, Chapter 2. And Kardec asks the Spirit, question 919, what is the most effective most effective method for guaranteeing self-improvement and resist the attraction of wrongdoing. And the Spirit's answer, a philosopher of antiquity once said, "Know thyself." So be self-aware. If I'm being proud, if I'm being selfish, do not wait for other people to get hurt. Do not wait until you hurt somebody else or you deny somebody else's access to somebody else. Identify those issues within yourself. So not only have this awareness, self-awareness, that's the first part, right? It's admit that, hey, there are some things that I need to do, but also try to eliminate the shortcomings. I like what also in the gospel, St. Augustine had a very interesting commentary about it. So the celebrated spirit, informed us that he had this nightly routine and he had like a ledger of reviewing his actions. And at the end of the day, he would have this balance of the good that he did, and also the bad. And he would the need to go over, it was this need for us to go over what actions cause harm or upset someone else. But also he also goes beyond that, and he asks for God and our spiritual guide, help, strength for self-improvement, because it requires strength for us to go to be proactive. It requires strength and courage for us to admit our mistakes and start working on those beforehand. A good thing also that I like about the message from St. Augustine is, and that's another message. So, so he indicates that nothing's hidden from nothing's hidden in the spiritual world. Even those actions and attitudes that we are unable to admit to ourselves. So again, we have to dissect these actions and thoughts and determine, when is it where I have infringed God's laws, ill-treated others, and or caused harm to someone else. So again, requires this self-awareness for me to analyze my actions, analyze my attitudes, and try to make amends. So if I start to see that my relationship with one of my loved ones is getting in the wrong direction, I should try to address what's going on. Is it me? Am I being proud and selfish? Or what's truly happening? Or is it that individual is going through a tough time, so I have to be more patient with that individual as well? Or should I give that individual more attention? So analyze before a situation gets very ugly. Analyze what's happening, analyzing how I can, if there's an issue, analyze how am I contributing to that issue, and how I can contribute to fix that issue. And if the other individual has the issue, see how you can help that person, instead of letting the relationship get in such a bad situation that, again, is going to cause even more harm for everybody. This is a very interesting one, because let go of perfectionism. So let go of perfectionism and take the attitude of iterative, adaptive change, and get to the root cause of problems. Again, kind of a mouthful here, but one of the nicest things about Kaizen is that it alerts against the fear of failure. So we might be also in a situation that we're so afraid of making mistakes that we do not take any actions. And that this overthinking, it is an issue for our progress, because it generates all this self-doubt and also leads to inaction. So it is unattainable for us to look for flawlessness, because that's going to just create barriers for our journey. So again, Kaizen reminds us that we it's okay for us, first of all, it's okay for us to make mistakes, and we're not going to improve overnight. So a situation that you have in a particular process that you need to improve again, let's say going back to the manufacturing process because it's easier for us to visualize, but a manufacturing process in your assembly line that is causing issues, it can be improved. But how much can I improve? Most likely, I'm not going to improve it overnight. It's going to take me several iterations to go through it. But the most important thing is that just because it's going to take me months to improve that process, that doesn't mean that I should have no process at all. It means that I should try as I go. And it's good for me to see mistakes, to see problems, because as a process continues to run, I'm going to identify shortcomings, and I'm going to have an issue. I'm going to have an opportunity to address those shortcomings proactively again. So again, our growth is consistent and is fostered by each small step. So we need to embrace advancement. We need to embrace the fact that we're in our path towards perfection, but we have to also recognize our imperfections and celebrate the times when we make mistakes, because believe it or not, whatever mistake we made, the mistakes we made in the past, they make who we are today. They contribute to us. So all those bad things, well, I shouldn't say bad thing, that's an exaggeration, but all those mistakes that I made, hopefully nobody has made a whole lot of real bad things. But again, so actions that I take, mistakes that I made in the past, they contribute to who I am today. The little mistakes that I made when I was a kid, I mean, the little childish situations, they help me be the individual I am today. Whatever choices I made as teenagers, they taught me lessons as a teenager. Whatever choices they made that I made, again, in my younger years and leading to I am right now, the good choices, the good and the bad, they all contributed to my learning. So again, it's okay for me to make mistakes, but again, we should also address those mistakes and taking those as learning opportunities and use those as stepping stones for my growth, spiritually speaking. So Francois Nicolas Madeleine, as Spirit in the Gospel according to Spiritism, explains that our virtues are a combination of those essential attributes which constitute a good person. So those are the virtues, are the good things, are the things we're doing right. However, those virtues, they're accompanied by minor imperfections that counterbalance them. But again, this is who I am. I should not deny myself, should not deny those imperfections, number one, and I should not be, feel discouraged because I have those, because again, this is who I am, and there's always room for improvement. So again, we should, but on the other hand, what the Spirit reminds us is that we should let ourselves be enveloped by the impulse to do what's right, which resides in us. The laws of God reside in the conscience. And conversely, we should avoid being ostentatious of anything that we are doing right and what we know. Because if I have a virtue, and that's kind of like a very interesting oxymoron, if I have a virtue and I start boasting about that virtue, that indicates that I'm actually lacking that particular virtue in a pure form. So, if I think that I might think to myself, hey, I'm such a charitable person, I'm telling everybody I'm very charitable, maybe I should really reconsider the level of how charitable, how altruistic I am. Because again, through pride, we lose ourselves, but the humility is the road to redemption. And again, it takes a lot of humility for us to recognize those actions that we're taking that should be improved. The next one is very interesting. It's use creativity to find solutions. And this is a good one because Kaizen encourages the pursuit of innovation and fosters small and continuous improvements, like we discussed before. And I like also when in Heaven and Hell, Kardec indicates to us that we were created simple and ignorant. And that was through exercising our free will that we continue to progress. Also, it is in the Spirit's book as well. So we see the importance of making our choices and using our brain and exercising our free will and testing and looking and using our creativity to solve our problems. Also, I like the very interesting section in Heaven and Hell. It's in part 1, chapter 3, in which Kardec explains to us that happiness of each spirit is proportion in proportion to their advancement. So therefore, you can have two spirits that might be side by side, and one might be happier than the other based on their level of awareness. And there are splendors that you cannot perceive due to our materiality. So we see here that as we progress, we have a clear view of universe and circumstances. And going back to creativity, again, what this indicates to us is that we should, whatever circumstance we have an opportunity to be happy. We have an opportunity to do the best we can do. And but it all depends on my awareness, on now my creativity. So I might be going through a very, very difficult circumstance. I might be going through a very hard period in my life. However, it's up to me to use my free will and my creativity to analyze that opportunity and figure out I figure out how that challenge can actually be turned into an opportunity for me. So if, just quote unquote, just as an example, if I'm dealing with a difficult family member, so of course it is a hurtful situation, but now I have the free will and I can decide, okay, am I going to let that hurt faster my heart and create a grudge towards that person, create an animosity, reinforce the animosity, or should I actually understand that probably this is an opportunity for reconciliation? So this is again using my creativity. Now let's think of ways for me to address it, and that's how we're going to be learning, is with these challenges that are thrown towards us, and realizing that, well, I might be going through a tough time, but what is it that I can learn during these circumstances? What is it I can do different? What I can do better? What can I do to improve the situation and overcome the situation? Again, could be a difficult family member, could be a difficult neighbor, difficult friend, difficult coworker. Again, also someone who considers himself or herself one of our enemies. Could be financial difficulties on earth, could be health issues. Regardless of what the circumstance is, it is up to us. We have our free will. Are we going to look at those as a challenge? Or am I going to see myself, oh my God, poor little me? Am I going to see myself as a victim? Or am I going to, again, use creative ways to overcome that and think how I can use that circumstance, that environment for my betterment as a spirit, both morally and intellectually. So again, we have this chance to better engage with places, situations, and relationships, etc. And even though a solution to a problem might seem impossible right now, and might seem even outside of our reach, we see that Jesus mentioned to us that his burden is light. So whatever is sent our ways, believe me, God's fair. And whatever is sent our ways, we do have the ability to overcome it, to address it, and come out of that situation better, as a better spirit than in the beginning. So again, with a little creative thinking, we might conclude that something that was an unsurmountable challenge is actually a blessing for us, and a blessing, and also some protection as well. That's another thing. As of sometimes something that quote unquote seems to be a bad situation is actually protecting us, is shielding us from a much difficult situation in the future. Just remind ourselves that we are immortal spirits. This is our This life here is an instance compared to eternity, and this is just one life of several other lives we're gonna have. So whatever we go through here will contribute to our improvement in the long run. So as we're approaching, we have 10 minutes here, so I'm gearing up to concluding. So I like this whole idea that yes, Kaizen was developed uh, by by material spirits, by reincarnated spirits to solve earthly matters. However, there is this intrinsic human need to strive for betterment. So the whole concept that we should let go of old notions and have the humility to move away from any kind of paradigms and embrace the change as well. So we need to have this attitude of self-reflection to know who I am and identify the what is it that I'm doing right that I should continue doing or actually doing better, and also remediate those aspects which we could polish. And we should not wait until those shortcomings they lead us to suffering, and we should address any root cause for our moral vices as soon as they become apparent to us. And again, an interesting thing about spiritual development is attitudes we had in the past, which were we did not see them as we saw them as acceptable in the past. As we evolve spiritually, we now recognize that, hey, I should have acted differently back then. So again, addressing those beforehand. And we need to think out of the box, very important. And as we learn more, we're always learning. And I'm not just referring in this present life. We have this ever expanding knowledge that we've been accumulating from several past lives. So and experiences. So we should go beyond what we are right now and start to implement healthier habits. And I'm not just talking about healthier habits, of course, healthier habits from a physical standpoint. Of course, our body is a tool, much needed tool for us here to manifest ourselves in the physical realm. But most importantly, also from a spiritual standpoint, not allowing our moral vices to be detrimental to our spiritual well-being. So in line, right, with this concept of spiritism, the spiritist teaching, that we see that the progress is continuous. So even though we're not perfect yet, we every small step we take in the right direction gets us close to divinity. So it's kind of a neat uh, parallel that we see between of course, the spiritist doctrine and these concepts in Kaizen. I really like the whole idea, and I was explaining before to Mark that when some years back when I was studying and learning about Kaizen, I was a spiritist already back then, and it was kind of neat that I saw in technology a concept that tells us that, hey, we are always learning, always growing, and things happen in steps, and it's okay for you to make the mistakes, but you gotta recognize the mistakes and address the mistakes before they um, they become more impactful. So I was kind of fascinated by the whole idea. There's a very there's of course there's a great book. Say that Life and Destiny by Leon Denis is a great book. It's an understatement. It's a true compendium of the Spiritist doctrine, and there is this interesting statement that he makes, and which in my case hits home. So basically, Denis says that The greater part of the world's wonderful discoveries in the physical domain were ideas perceived first through intuition. And he gives an interesting example here. For long, Newton had entertained the thought of universal attraction, and then the fall of an apple gave his physical senses the objective demonstration. So I like this concept that so many ideas that we see on our manifested on our physical realm, they started by somebody's intuition. So somebody great, so many great things that we've accomplished, and mankind has come long ways. And the great news is that we still, as part of humankind, we still have a long ways to go, and there are so many great things we can do. But the beauty of it is that a lot of any great advancements, they started by somebody's intuition. Somebody received this idea, and eventually, when the time was ripe, it was implemented. So we see this again. I like this parallel that I see, and most likely the whole concept. And again, the whole concept of Kaizen did not. It was an evolving concept. It was started. The idea started in the 30s, and it matured in the 40s, and reached us today. But somebody had a group of people that started having this intuition that maybe progress, this idea of progress is not something that's going to happen overnight. I'm not going to start building efficient electric vehicles overnight. There's going to be some steps that are going to reach there. So I like this whole concept that Denis brings to light for us, that anything that some of these great things that we see, somebody had an intuition, somebody learned about it in the spiritual world. There are two, of course, there are two other Spiritist books among the many other great Spiritist books. One of them is Memoirs of a Suicide, and the story behind Memoirs of Suicide is that there was a narrative about a device, and the device is actually is a TV display, and the book was not published. The book waited to be published for some years because the TV was not available on the spiritual realm, and I'm sorry, not available in the material realm, but it was available in the spiritual realm. So I like this idea of whatever technology we have, whatever concepts we have, those are already in the spiritual world. Somebody has already created those, and some other ones we haven't seen yet as well. There's also in Memoirs of Suicide, there's a description of a holograph, and it's a beautiful book. I mean, I totally I could not recommend Memoirs of Suicide enough. And there's a description of how the reincarnation is being planned, and there's a 3D model of the body of the spirit that's going to be reincarnated. So we see these concepts that are already in the spiritual world, and we are, as spirits, of course, being a spirit, we're exposed to those. We interact with other spirits that are wiser than us in the spiritual world. And then when we come on earth, to think, maybe there's this concept of a 3D model for medicine that I don't remember where I saw that, but somebody in the back of my mind, and now I'm going to implement it for medicine. Or again, in the case of process improvement for manufacturing or software development. And just to finalize here, there's another example also in Nosso Lar, in which they also mention music. And Andrea Lewis, the spirit that narrates the story, tells us that musicians, they go to the spiritual world, and they interact, they listen to music there that is so much beautiful, so much advanced. So actually those musicians, they go during the sleep, when the soul regains some temporary freedom. So they go to a place like Nossolai, and they're exposed to beautiful music, and then when they're back to their physical body, they have this idea behind them, their minds, of beautiful music. So again, all these concepts that we see in science and technology and the arts, so many of the things that we see came from the spiritual world, where there's a lot more advancement. So for all of us, there's more to come in that arena. So let's learn as we go in our small steps, continue improvement, continue growing, and that's a great thing.
Wow. Thank you so much, Glaucio. That I have so many perspectives and memories and things I wish I knew then that I know now and so on. But I do think in much of this discussion, it helps to have a real world scenario. So I'd like to just generally introduce a real world scenario where these principles of Kaizen, and in particular the principles that align with Spiritist principles, became very evident. So if you're old enough to remember, hospitals, in whatever state, in whatever community that you are, the hospitals that you have today weren't always there. There were different types of places that evolved into what we have today. There is technology that became part of all those facilities. And so there's a variety of things that the medical community and large hospitals, small hospitals, everybody has done in order to stay current with the technology that's available and provide better healthcare. So there's the concept of why Kaizen makes so much sense, because whatever you were doing last year and whatever you could be doing this year is completely different. So hospital systems, from the legal standpoint, from the insurance standpoint, and so on, are constantly facing change, constantly striving for continuous improvement. And my best example of this is the ER. If you've ever walked into an ER 20 years ago and you walk in today, the process is completely different, much more efficient. And if you are over 65 and Medicare, you have a priority. The government has made you a priority in the ER. Unless you are bleeding to death, unless you are a child, you are going to have, as an older person, a Medicare patient, a priority to be seen earlier, especially if you have an existing condition. And when did this come to fruition? COVID. Medicare had already implemented these changes, and COVID upset the apple cart. And hospitals are still trying to figure out how to process changes as a result of COVID. And I just use that as an example, the Medicare system, the medical system in this country. But it's true everywhere. Change is inevitable. How do you manage change? And that's the Kaizen principles of that'll relate directly to Spiritism, because everybody wants continuous improvement. In the case of healthcare, better, faster, cheaper. It goes on and on. That's it. That's my real world example. So we have Q&A session that will start shortly. We have a number of questions that are already in the queue, but we want to make some announcements. And the first one is the 19th U.S. Spiritist Symposium. This is the annual USF national event. It will happen on September 20th in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Save the date and join us to reflect on the evolution of consciousness, a path towards enlightenment. Kind of goes on with what we were just talking about, the evolution, the continuous improvement of consciousness. And it gets us closer to enlightenment. Anyway, at the symposium, as always, there'll be activities for kids and teens and intelligent activity and socializing for the adults. You can register at the spiritist.us website. Second, we have a podcast-like series titled Psychology and Spirituality. And this has been going on for a number of weeks, months now. It's based on the works by Joanna DeAngelis. And this new episode every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, always available on both YouTube and Spotify. A bridge to a better life. And again, it's the evolution concept that the spirits are presenting to us in a variety of different flavors. Next, we have a new book release, The Spiritist Review. 1865 by Allan Kardec. And this book is now available on the USSF Spiritist Books webpage. Next, we have the Spiritist app, Be My Hope. And if you haven't downloaded this, you should, because this app offers daily content, uplifting, and a collection of videos, messages, audio materials, and it's all there to constantly review if you choose to. I know there are 2 or 3 that I frequently go back and re-listen to. You can download this from the Apple Store or from Google Play, and it is completely free. And now available are 7 free professionally recorded Spiritist audiobooks. These were sponsored and produced by the Spiritist Society of the Carolinas. And this allows you at your own pace to listen to Allan Kardec's foundational works. And you can get this on the Spiritist Society Carolinas YouTube site. Now on the screen, please note this QR code. If you want to help the USSF produce more publications, promote Spiritism to everyone, then please scan this QR code with your phone as it appears on the screen, and it will lead you to a donation page. All donations are tax deductible. Okay, we're now going to turn our attention to your comments and questions. There's still plenty of time for new questions to be submitted. Use the chat window to do so. And I'm going to let Glaucio now take these questions one at a time.
I like this one. Daniel posted this one. How can the Kaizen principle, continuous incremental effort, help an individual sustain their commitment to moral growth during times of failure or discouragement, preventing them from abandoning the process entirely? So I would say definitely the principle of not being afraid to fail. Accepting the failure, and I know accepting the failure sounds a bit strange, but owning the error. So do not see the mistake as a failure. See that mistake, that time when you did not behave as expected, as a learning opportunity. So instead of being, because a lot of times, unfortunately, we have a few bad tendencies when we make mistakes. So first of all, we try to justify the mistake. We try to justify, oh, I did this because I had, like if we had no other choice. Or we try to blame others. That's a term for that. It's called attribution of blame. I try to project the mistake on others. Or I try to victimize myself, saying, hey, I was the victim of the circumstances. So there's this different ways for me to address it. But what I do, the right way for me to say is, okay, I did it wrong, yes, and I did it. And not only I did it wrong again and again and again. But recognize also that I'm going to learn from it. Look at it not so much as a failure, but try to collect the gems that I can do from that circumstance and see how I can improve. What is it that this lesson is teaching me? Life is trying to teach me something. If I'm making the same mistake over and over again, there's a lesson there for me. So the reason why I'm making the same mistakes is not because of anybody else. It's because there's something that I need to improve on. So don't feel discouraged. Don't see yourself as a victim. Don't try to blame anybody else. Don't see yourself as a failure. See it as a learning lesson going forward, and actually recognize, also celebrate also the fact that even though I make the same mistake today, it was not as bad as the last time I made that mistake before.
Very good, very good. Okay, the International Spiritist Council has a question. Our learning is individual, but we need to live in society to truly progress. How does this concept relate to Kaizen?
Actually, it does. It does completely, because two things that Kaizen instructs is, again, for you to have the commitment for change, you have to commit, you have to be focused on the change. But change is also cooperative. And again, it's the manufacturing. Actually, I like the example. I didn't think about healthcare, Mark. That's I think for help. But you're in a hospital, right? I mean, this is a very mundane example. You have everybody. You have from the janitor who plays an important part in the hospital. You have the orderlies. You have the nurses. You have the doctors, and you have the head surgeon. You have the whole. So everybody contributes to the improvement. So the same way that my interaction, let's say, hey, I'm the director of, let's say I'm the director of ER, and as I'm dealing with the janitor, what is it I can learn from the janitor to improve the ER? In the same way as the janitor, what are some opportunities that I have to contribute to the improvement as a whole? So going back also for us spiritually, totally. I mean, being society is the most important thing we have, because I don't know how, I cannot realize how selfish I am until I'm surrounded by people, and I'm not, and I recognize, hopefully I'm recognized that I'm not, and I'm not being as altruistic with others. So it is so important for us, because whatever actions we take is the ripple effect that impacts others, and the way others act towards us also impact us and can teach us something. I heard a very interesting example from another spiritist many years ago, and the way you polish stones is precious gems. You put them all in, you tumble them together, and as they are interacting with each other, that's how they polish each other. So that's the way we are. We're rough. We're gems in the rough, and as we interact with each other. And here on planet Earth, the tendency is for those interactions to not be so good, because we're all imperfect spirits. I mean, including myself. So of course, those interactions are going to be rough, because we're still rough gems. But it's important for us to be helping one another. So again, that person that I see in my eyes as a difficult individual, that person has an impact on me, because that person is pointing to my imperfections and those shortcomings that I have to improve on. So it's a blessing to encounter those people, even though it's not as pleasant, that's not as fun, but there's something that I can learn from each individual. Are there any? I'm sorry, Mark. I'm Studio Thunder. You're mute. You're mute. Oh.
Oh, that's interesting. Am I back?
You're back. You see, you just
Oh,
learned from your mistake. If something happened, the next time it's not going to happen again.
continuous improvement. So we've talked about all these aligned principles between Kaizen and Spiritism, but are there any points where there is divergence? Spiritism goes in one way and Kaizen doesn't. Anything come
I
to mind?
No, it does not come to mind. I'm being very honest, because again, just because Kaizen is not a doctrine. That's the important thing. I have to clarify. Kaizen is not a doctrine.
It's a
Kaizen is
concept.
not a technology. It's a mindset for improvement. So that's basically what it is. And there are several points of this mindset. So it's kind of like different. That's why if it was something very applied, like a technology or another doctrine, then I say, okay, there are some points that can diverge. But again, Kaizen is all about optimism, all about improvement and small steps. And even there are some points in Kaizen. There's two other points in Kaizen that I did not mention here. One of them is know your customer. The Kaizen does say, hey, know the needs of your customer. And even that, I like to apply to Spiritans, because knowing who you're dealing with, knowing who expects outcomes from you. So if you can think, instead of a customer, think about those individuals that are around you. Again, going back to society. So understanding the needs of those around you, it's also helpful for you to improve yourself, to see how you can contribute, you can improve. Another one is a concept of Gamba, and Gamba means to see how it's done in practice, be familiar how it's done in practice. And again, a mindset, but it's not against the spiritism, because in spirit we reincarnate. That's the reason why we reincarnate, is to be in the Gamba, is to be in practice. So yeah, this, I cannot see a divergency, again, because spiritism is a doctrine that has moral impacts to us. Kaizen is a mindset. It's like, at a higher, what should I say? Is a mindset, it's a way of thinking. So I really cannot see. I mean, even at the most mundane aspects of it.
I thought the same thing when I saw the question the first time. I went, "Wow, that'll take some serious thought to find one." Okay, here's my favorite question, only because I've encountered this so many times. You spoke of the dangers, and of course, Spiritism speaks of the dangers of ego and pride. So, when you are in a meeting or an opportunity to educate and engage with leaders, executives, business owners, managers, directors, etc., they may not necessarily understand the fundamentals of managing change. Any suggestions on how to introduce that concept without bruising their egos?
That's a different, yeah, that's a lecture in itself. Now, I'm going to give you the practical answer, and I'm going to give you the spiritist view of it. So, from a practical answer, today, in the way, the understanding of management today, the way we understand business and technology, and I'm going to talk about now in very mundane terms. So you have to embrace change. So if an executive or any kind of manager does not embrace change, then that individual is on the right, is on the wrong path. There is he is putting the whole organization at risk. And again, we think about executives, but we are all managers. We are all managers of our households. We're all managers of our families. We're all managers of ourselves. Our life is we our life is a project. We have to manage our life as well. So we all manage at some point. So if a manager, if anybody, if we do not embrace change, there is a risk. There is actually a risk of several problems. Now, from a spiritist standpoint, I've been a spiritist. I've been both sides. I've been a spiritist and in the professional world as well. It's just understand that you this is a whoever you're dealing with is a spirit just like myself. If that individual does not understand some of the concepts yet, that individual is evolving. So whatever situation we are in on earth is an opportunity for improvement. And I've seen in my here on earth, and I'm seeing individuals who have been so blessed, and they were able to advance into higher echelons professionally and politically and whatnot here on earth, and very fast. And it's a blessing, it's an opportunity for that individual to help others and to learn. So first of all, I understand that spirit is learning. That's part of his or her learning. And with that sense, being respectful to that person, express how, respectfully express some points, respect the individual. You understand that the individual, the same way also that as a professional, but also as a spirit, as a human being, I'm learning. That individual is going to learn as well. And that individual has opportunities to learn. One thing that is very important is in anything is as you're dealing with the executive, if you're dealing with the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, if you're dealing with a manager, if you're dealing, again, no problem being a janitor, but if you're dealing with a janitor, again, those are, of course, we have such perceptions, limited perceptions of hierarchy on earth. No matter what you're dealing with, treat that person as an immortal soul, as someone who's learning in whatever circumstance he or she is, but also somebody who can teach me something as well. And that's very important for our growth.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Glaucio. And I'd also like to thank everyone who has joined us for today's live talk and to those who regularly follow the weekly Spiritist Talk series. Your continued engagement is truly appreciated. On June 21st, a week from today, we will have the sixth episode of the U.S. Spiritism Movement in Action. Tanya Schwartz and guests will be talking about the upcoming Spiritist Symposium. Claudio, Glaucio, I'm sorry. Before we close the live session, could you end it for us with some final remarks and a prayer?
No, I want to thank the opportunity to be here and talk again about a concept that applies to anything, and yeah, and also that has synergies with spiritism. And going back to the question about making mistakes, believe me, make mistakes is part of the game. So if you're on planet Earth and you're not making mistakes, then you're in the wrong planet. You're supposed to be in a much higher globe. But the important thing is making those mistakes, learn from them, and get better. um, Mark, if it's okay with you, I'm ready to say the final prayer.
Very good.
Thank you, Lord, for all the opportunities that you provide to us, all the experiences that we have. Thank you so very much for the joyful moments in life because they are so great for us. They provide us such incentives to keep moving on. But also thank you very much for those circumstances that are challenging, that are problematic. Thank you also for those because they teach us so much as well about ourselves, about the universe, about the moral laws, and they're all opportunities. So thank you for our experience on earth. It is a blessing for us to be back here, learning, evolving. But it's also a big blessing for us to understand that we are immortal. We are on the path to perfection, and no matter how flawed we are, one day we're going to be perfect and happy. So be it.
And so it is. Thank you so much, Glaucio. And everyone, have a great rest of your weekend. Blessings.